I have this habit. I don't know if it's a good habit or a bad habit. I know it's not a good habit, but I'm not sure it's a bad habit. And that's when, if I have a lot of stuff to get done, so I know I'm going to be working well into the evening, I will go after everyone else has gone to bed into the small television room we have at the Abbey and turn on Food Network to keep me company. The Food Network is the perfect background noise because there's no plots, there's nothing you have to follow. It's just interesting comments by food snobs and sad people trying to impress them, usually unsuccessfully. But one of the things that I've learned from the numerous hours that I've had Food Network playing in the background is that salt is not something we use as a flavor in and of itself. No one just wants salt. I mean, maybe if you're a horse or a deer or something and you need a salt lick. But for us, people, usually, we don't just want a spoonful of salt. Salt is something that's added because of what it does for the other flavors that are present. That's why we even put salt in our baking and in sweet things, because it heightens our ability to receive the other flavors that are present. So salt isn't there in and of it for its own sake. We use salt for the sake of all the other flavors that we're trying to share and communicate. Light serves in a similar manner, if you think about it. Light for light's sake is kind of a dangerous thing. You go and stare at the sun, there's consequences. When there's eclipses, I don't know if when you were in school you had to make those little pinhole things that you'd use to watch the eclipse, but you couldn't look directly at the sun. The value of light is the fact that it reflects off of everything else. That it allows us to see with clarity everything else that's around us. We don't stare at the source of light itself. And so when Jesus is calling us to be salt of the earth and light to the world, he's not calling us to some self-aggrandizing vision of how significant and important we are, and everyone should be looking at us and acknowledging how essential we happen to be. Quite the contrary. He's inviting us to recognize that our role is to ensure that the well-being and the dignity and the value and the gifts and the presence of everyone who surrounds us is lifted, is heightened, is sensed, is seen. In a real sense, if salt's used well in a dish, you don't really know it's there. If the sun is high in the sky, we don't think about it, but we benefit from its rays. To be salt and light is not a call about how great we are, but a mission to help others understand the value that they possess. Now the challenge is Jesus doesn't say you should go and be like salt and be like light. Go figure out how to do that. He says you are. He says we already are, by virtue of being his disciples, salt and light. But there's so many moments where it doesn't feel that way. Where we think, I'm in a flavorless wasteland. Or I'm shrouded in darkness. Then how could I be those things? Well, the prophet Isaiah, I think, gives us great insight into that. When he says, share your bread with the hungry, shelter the oppressed and the homeless, clothe the naked when you see them, and do not turn your back on your own. Then your light shall break forth like the dawn, and your wound shall quickly be healed. If you remove from your midst oppression, false accusation, and malicious speech, if you bestow your bread on the hungry and satisfy the afflicted, then light shall rise for you in the darkness, and the gloom shall become for you like midday. In the prophet Isaiah, the light only becomes apparent after one's action in faith, not before. He doesn't say, follow the light. He said, you're in darkness and act as though the light is present, and then you will see that it is there. If we are the light and we are called to shine on others, to testify to the presence and the glory of our God, then the fact that we can identify darkness isn't of itself a sign that we are the light. If I can say there is sadness and pain and hunger and despair and oppression and injustice, then that is the call of where I am called to be. And that can be terrifying because so often we feel like, well, what do I have to contribute? What change can I make? What difference does my presence mean? But I think as these men who have returned from their Acts retreat this weekend can testify, that it's precisely in those moments when we feel we have nothing that we see the power of what God does through us. When we say, God, I have nothing to give but me, but my presence, but a word, but a hand. I don't know what else to do. But when we take that risk, when we're willing to step into the space that it seems like God is most absent, is when we come to know that He is truly present. Because in that moment, His light has been brought into that space. St. Paul exhorts us to that truth as well, as he speaks of his mission. He says, I came to you in weakness and fear and much trembling. And my message and my proclamation were not with persuasive words of wisdom, but with a demonstration of spirit and power, so that your faith might rest not on human wisdom, but on the power of God. And St. Paul's own ministry, over and over again, he references his own weakness, his own brokenness, his own imperfection, his own sin, and recognizes the value that that has in the movement of God's grace in this world. Because it's through that, it's through his weakness, through his darkness, through those moments of flavorlessness that he experienced as a disciple, that the brilliance of God's presence was given a canvas to shine. Any one of us who's made major life commitments, if you're married, if you have children, if you're caring for an elderly parent, know this truth so well. In all those moments where you're like, I have no idea how to respond to this, I don't have anything left to offer of myself, and yet somehow you do. Something comes to be. Grace moves. That happens in our family lives, and it happens even in our moments in community. A more mundane example of this, but I think a very powerful one, is when I came to you all last November, and I was a little distressed because we were $25,000 below on our annual Catholic appeal collection. And I didn't know what we were going to do, where that money was going to come from. Because as a parish, we're not a wealthy community. And our parish operations are basically like all of our families. We live paycheck to paycheck. What we bring in on a Sunday is about what we pay out that week. And I brought that challenge to our community. And people responded. And I don't think there was a single person in our community that thought, oh yeah, that's no problem, I'll just write a $25,000 check, here you go, Father. But because everyone was willing to say, well, I can't solve that problem, but this is what I have, and could contribute what that was, by the time, in a very New Mexican way, the last day of December rolled around, we were $4,000 over our goal. And I say that not not to talk about the significance of money in and of itself, but to talk about the fact that money is a representation of our actions, of our values, of our priorities, just like our time is, just like how we use our talents, just like the vulnerability we offer even in our weaknesses. Show where our hearts happen to be. And I bring that up as an example today because even though it took us an entire year to meet our goal, now we're in a new year, and so the ACA starts again. So see, if we're a little quicker on fulfilling that goal, you hear less about it from me. That can be our deal, right? Because of course we have no choice. It's an assessment that the diocese gives us, but it's also our opportunity to recognize that what we as a community do and contribute isn't just about us. That just as individually, if we're called to be salt and light in the world, we help to nourish the dignity and the presence and the visibility of those who surround us in our families and here in our parish, that we as a parish within the Archdiocese, a parish that's often seen as a beacon of light, have a responsibility to share that truth and empower others. And that's precisely what the annual Catholic Appeal does. It allows the distribution of resources from communities like ours that are so blessed to allow all the other works and ministries of the Archdiocese across this vast geographic area to be known, to be shared, for the gospel to be preached, for lay ministers to be formed, for deacons to be formed, for our seminarians to be funded, for the ministries that we offer in our prisons and in our hospitals, for all the places that we as a parish family can't physically touch ourselves. It's our way of acknowledging the importance of those actions. So next week in the pews, you'll get your little ACA pledge card, and you'll have the opportunity to fill that out. If you've already given to the ACA, you probably already got your mailing from the Archbishop requesting your pledge for this year. But what reminded me of this so significantly yesterday was that yesterday was an extremely busy day here at Holy Rosary. The Knights of Columbus had their awesome free throw contest. The Pilgrimage for Vocations leadership formation training was here all day. We had a quinceañera, we had a funeral. Every corner of the campus was filled with people. And we had a lot of people who are not from our community present. And so many of them came up to me as I was running around like a chicken without a head, not knowing which way was up. And they said, "There's so much life and vibrancy here." It's easy to forget that. It's easy to just get bogged down with things like bills and tasks and realize that every bill we have to pay is a statement of the ministry we're able to achieve. Every meeting we have to attend is an affirmation of the people that we're able to serve. Every action that we are able to do together is a statement of who we are as the body of Christ, greater than any one of us are as an individual. And that's something that we must take to heart, that we already are salt and light. And at our best, the world itself recognizes that. And when it recognizes that well, it doesn't see us, but it sees the face of Christ.